Good night, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jazz. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the hearing to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory and the home and the traditional lands of the Ojibwe, Cree, Dakota people, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this morning. Introducing the panel members who are on Zoom is Michelle Duncan and Valerie Warhan. Our recording secretary is Jaswinder Kumar, and representing the city from the assessment department is Ryan Valderrama. We'll be hearing application for revision of the assessment rule, the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested is described in each application, and we'll limit discussions to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it, along with the City Administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at this hearing and issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board decision in respect to application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to application from exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing this morning, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then it'll be the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this morning. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's order or decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing this morning items 1 to 7 on our docket today. Mr. Kumar, can you affirm the assessor and the applicant's testimony? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Ryan Valderrama.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Jared Story.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Good morning, gentlemen. We're going to deal with the docket, and the first one is 617 Dufferin Avenue. Mr. Valderrama, whenever you're ready, you can take us through this property. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The property has a file number of 22-1062. It has a roll number of 14002399000. The property is located at 617 Dufferin Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023. I'm using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $2,761,000. The property is classified as a residential 2 with the liability of grant. The property is a residential apartment with 4 buildings, 3 stories, an actual and effective year built of 1989. It has 28 suites with 8 outdoor parking. This zone is residential 2 family. It has a land area of 44,166 square feet, a plan area of 12,768 square feet, and a gross floor area of 38,304 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. And on page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, there are 28 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $999.98. It is It has a class and liability of 20G. It has a gross potential rent of $335,993. It has a vacancy rate of 3.2% and a vacancy in terms of dollars of $10,752. It has an effective gross income of $325,241, an expense ratio of 46.94%, or $152,668. The net operating income is $172,573. The cap rate is 6.25%, and the capitalized income is $2,761,168, or $2,761,000 rounded. On next page, page 5, are some rent comparables. The first one is located at 229 McCrae Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $878. The next one is located at 183 Euclid Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,036. The third one is located at 480 Charles Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,044. And the last one is located at 620 McGregor Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $896. And on page 6 is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. On page 7 and page 8 are some capitalization rate discussion. Mr. Chair, if I may, for the interest of time, I would just go through this, the page 7 and page 8, and they will both be applied to the rest of the properties that we will be dealing with today, Mr. Chair.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. So page 7, capitalization rates. A direct capitalization method is used to convert a property's single year of income into an indication of value by dividing the estimated net operating income by an appropriate capitalization rate. Capitalization rates can be derived from properties that have sold by dividing each property's net operating income by its sale price. For the 2023 general assessment, using reference date of April 1st, 2021, capitalization rates were derived from model-generated estimates of net operating income and sale prices that were time-adjusted to April 1st, 2021. The assessed values produced by the application of these model-generated capitalization rates were compared to sale prices, and assessment to sale price ratios were calculated. The resulting ratio statistics for the Assessment and Taxation Departments, or ATD's, income-producing models satisfy the standards set forth specified and set forth in the Standard on Ratio Studies as approved in April 2013 and published by the International Association of Assessing Officers, or IAAO. ATD's capitalization rates are further supported by comparison with real estate market reports from Colliers International Canada, CBRE National Research, and Cushman and Wakefield. The following chart compares ATD's capitalization rates with the published rates by fitting ATD's rates into the property type categories used in these reports. ATD's property type classes are more comprehensive so that they cover every property type in the city. Excuse me. The 20th and 80th percentiles show the range of capitalization rates used by ATD for 60% of the parcels within that specific property type. In many cases, the published rates will fall between 20th and 80th percentiles, indicating the tenability of the capitalization rates derived by ATD. So if we move down to the chart, in the chart, we'll see multifamily. The 20th to 80th percentile range is from 4.8 to 5.6%. On next page, page 8, is the capitalization rate evidence. The following is a sample of actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose for showing these individual capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. They are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property. Net operating income has been developed through destabilizing owner-reported income and expense information. Capitalization rates have been derived by dividing the property's net operating income by its sale price. So the first one First sale is located at 2390 McPhillips. It was sold on October 9, 2020 for $19.4 million. It has 90 suites. It was built in 2015 with an effective age of 2015. The dollar sale per suite is $215,556, and the calculated cap rate is 4.79%. The next one is located at 700 St. Mary's. It was sold on April 7th, 2020. It was sold for $1,035,000. It has nine suites. It was built and effective. It has an effective year age of 1961. The calculated dollar sale per suite is $115,000, and the calculated cap rate is 3.6%. Third one is located at 203 Bertrand. It was sold on June 14, 2019. It was sold for $925,000. It has 9 suites. It was built in 1963 with the same effective age. The dollar sale per suite is $102,778, and it has a calculated cap rate of 4.77%. The next one is located at 555 Corridon. It has a sale date it was sold on November 26, 2018 for $1,575,000. It has 16 suites with a year built and effective age of 1955. The calculated dollar sale per suite is $98,438. It has a calculated cap rate of 5.74%. Next is located at 677 Maryland. It was sold on December 15, 2020. It was sold for $2.4 million with 32 suites. It has a year built of 1913 and effective age of 1972. The dollar sale per suite is $75,000, and the calculated cap rate is 5.5%. Last one is located at 32 Arden. It was sold on March 1st, 2019 for $2,875,000. It has 23 suites. It was built in 1969, and it has an effective age of 1984. The dollar sale per suite is $125,000, and the calculated cap rate is 5.05%. On the next page, pages 9 up to page 16 is the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderama. Mr. Story, questions of the assessor?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you. Mr. Valderrama, have you ever visited this property?
No, I haven't.
Mr. Valderrama, are you familiar with this stretch of Dufferin Avenue?
Yes.
Okay, can we agree that there would be, let's say, substantial preclusions to private development or investment, given the built environment at the present time with regards to this stretch of Dufferin Avenue? Would that be fair to say?
That would be hypothetical on my part, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure of any preclusions or anything like that.
Okay.
On that.
So if you're familiar with this stretch of Dufferin, are you aware of any development that's gone on in the last, within a reasonable amount of time, or is the built environment generally, let's say, declining in this stretch of Dufferin?
I wouldn't say it's declining, but there's no recent development.
Oh, okay. And just to be very clear, we are between, let's say, McGregor and the Salter Bridge, correct?
Gregor and Salter, yes.
And we're about 1 block away from Jarvis, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'll ask you again, do you think location would be a factor that would be considered by a prudent investor when looking at this property on Dufferin Avenue?
Could be.
Okay. And can we agree that this is indeed social housing?
Without inspecting it and only basing it on the ownership, yes, it is social housing.
Okay. Well, the liability is grant and the owner is Manitoba Housing. So that's a pretty good indicator that it is indeed social housing, correct?
I just answered the question, yes.
Okay. And Now, there are multiple buildings on site. Typically, multiple buildings would command a higher cap rate in a market scenario based on the fact that you have more systems, more roofs, more area. So typically, more infrastructure is less efficient and would typically be considered a higher risk in a market perspective, correct?
I wouldn't be sure about that, so I wouldn't be able to answer the question, Mr. Chair.
Okay, but isn't it true that the assessors and the model in the past have indeed applied a higher cap rate based on the fact that there are multiple buildings on site? So think about garden apartments or row houses, for example. Is that not correct?
Yeah, typically this could be considered as a row housing as well. So yeah,
And this should be precisely. This property should be considered a row house, correct?
could be.
Well, sorry, not to put too fine a point on this, but it's not really a matter of it's not a matter of opinion. The physical structure is indeed 4 buildings and they're row houses, correct?
It could be, yes.
Okay, but the city has called them apartments. Now, there is a different code for row housing, and that should presumably affect the model, correct?
I'm not sure how the model would react to that, so I'm not aware of how it would affect the cap rate if we change the from res app to row housing.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, I'm going to leave my questions on these social housing assets to cap rate. That's going to be the crux of our issue in general. So I'll limit my questions to the risk profile of the asset. Mr. Valderrama, we have 28 suites here with only 8 parking spaces. Now, can we agree that that's a very low parking ratio, especially for row housing, for family housing?
I would say yes.
Okay. Now, just want to speak about your some of the cap rates information that you've submitted here. Now, I'm going to go to page 7. Now, I appreciate that you've read this cap rate, this form that's been in, I believe it's in every single docket or every file here today. But can you explain what it says here in the second paragraph? The cap rates were derived from model generated estimates of NOI and sales prices. Can you give us a sense of how the model makes those estimates, or what sort of parameters or assumptions the model might make in doing that calculation, those calculations?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have that information.
Okay, and isn't it true that in the city's guide to income producing properties, that it suggests that cap rates are between 3.85 to 7.4%? Isn't that correct?
Is that in my evidence? I do have the 20th to 80th percentile here on my evidence, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no, I understand that. But in terms of the first document that we see from the city at the beginning of the reassessment, it's called the Valuation Guide to Income Producing Properties, and it gives us some parameters as to how the city has treated the properties that will be reassessed. And can we agree that it does indeed say that the cap rates, the larger swath, are between 3.85 to 7.4%?
Again, I mean, I do have presented here 20th to 80th percentile, so I'm not. It's not included in my evidence, Mr. Chair.
Okay, it's in our cap rate study. So is it fair to say then that you're not aware of that document, the city's document on income producing valuation? Is that correct?
Yes, it's in your document, as you mentioned.
Okay, that's fine. Now I'm going to go to page 8 very quickly. Now the second paragraph here, it says that the NOI has been developed through stabilizing unreported income and expense information. Now, I guess the obvious question is, have you provided any of these workups for the panel or for the owners and their agents to review? Are there any workups, any calculations, so we can see the assumptions that were made in deriving these cap rates? Is there any work to support these cap rates that you presented?
None.
No, okay. And it also says, just not to be too picky here, but it does say that that this is to substantiate the model. But again, you've mentioned the 20th and 80th percentile, but these sales don't generally fall in that 4.8 to 5.6, do they?
They could fall outside. Yes, they are.
Okay, and then let's talk about a few of them. We have a couple of these in our study, and that's fine. But 2390 McPhillips, there's been a fair bit of discussion about this property, but are you aware that at the time of purchase, the rents were below market?
Well, it is the actual rent. So whether it is market at that time or not, then it is the actual rent, and we used it to calculate the cap rate.
Okay, and that's fine, and I appreciate that, but I suppose okay, let me ask you this, let me back up for one moment. Did you review the rents on 2390 McPhillips yourself?
It was reviewed by a colleague in our department.
Okay. Okay, so you're not aware then that they were indeed below market and then raised upon purchase by a real estate investment trust, correct?
Well, the actual rents are the ones that are used here. So whether it is market or not at that time, I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay, but can we just agree mathematically that with all other points being held constant, if the cash flow, the rents, the potential net market income increases mathematically, if all things are held equal, the cap rate decompresses, it becomes higher. Can we agree on that?
Well, if the rents are higher or the net operating income is higher, and given that your sale price is consistent or constant, then the cap rate would be higher. Yes.
Right. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Now, 700 St. Mary's. Are you aware that was a purchase where there was an intention to renovate, and that's why that extremely low cap rate is being generated here?
None in the mailers that was said that it was intended to renovate. So I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay, but we've had a number of hearings on these properties. It's been put to you. You've seen our rebuttal. But okay, if you're unaware of that, that's fine. But can we agree as a general rule that when we see a cap rate that is this extraordinarily low, that typically this would indicate that a purchaser has looked for let's call it a topside or an economic opportunity, and it's not typical of market, and there are municipal board decisions stating that we ought not to use properties purchased with the intention to renovate for precisely that reason. Can we agree on that?
I am not sure of what the intent or what the purchaser is thinking, so I cannot comment on it or answer it.
All right, and Arden, now that's interesting because that was originally in the Altus cap study, and when we investigated it further, we found that there was missing income, and I think it was a miscellaneous income from typically it comes by way of parking, laundry, something like that. So you would be aware of that, correct?
I wouldn't know.
You're not aware of that. Okay. All right. So I guess my last question, and again, I'll ask Mr. Chair that some of these questions carry through to some of the other social housing assets that we deal with today. But Mr. Boardroom, are you aware of the municipal board decisions that suggest to us that when we're looking at social housing, we ought to recognize that they are indeed riskier investments and therefore increase the cap rate above what we'll call a market cap rate? Are you aware of the literature surrounding that, as well as the decisions that provide the guiding principles on that matter?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chair, those are my questions. And Mr. Boardroom, I thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Story. Ms. Duncan, questions of the assessor?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, I thank you. Ms. Warren, any questions of the assessor?
None at this time, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Vanderama, this is social housing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's Manitoba Housing. Is there a income factor for tenants moving in? Do you know? Is it based on their income?
For this one, I am not aware of that, so I'm not sure if it's considered. But usually, social housing, they tend to look at income. But on this, yeah, generally.
Okay. Mr. Story, there is 8 parking stalls, outdoor parking stalls for 28 units. Do you think this is a deterrent in regards to renting, the subject property?
I'm not sure if it's actually deterrent. All I know is usually housing, they're 100% occupied most of the time. And
So
actually, there are some housing complexes that are even having wait lists. So I'm not sure if it is actually a deterrent.
thank you. Mr. Radrama, you're more or less defending the model, and so, you know, your cap rate is based on age, location of the subject?
Age, location, size, among others. There could be some that some other factors that are affecting it that I'm not sure how models are reacting. The model is reacting to it.
So you think the cap rate that you're using for the subject property, which is 6.25, is applicable?
Yes.
And that cap rate takes into all factors considered: location, the building itself, the area.
I would think so, yes.
Okay, I thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Story, your presentation, and it looks like I've done a little bit of research. Your NOIs are exactly the same as the city, so it boils down to be cap rate for the subject. So the floor is yours.
Right, you are, sir. Thank you. And just to sort of explain that now, just while it's still fresh in our minds, Mr. Boardroom did mention that there are sometimes waiting lists for social housing, and of course that's true because these are rent geared to income properties. These are not market properties. So just to be very, very clear, we don't want to conflate the notion of a waiting list for a market apartment versus a waiting list for a property where the guiding factor is indeed, as you quite rightly pointed out, Mr. Chair, that it's based on income. So this is policy driven. This is not market driven. But our what we're doing here today is trying to determine what the value of this property might be in the eyes of the market. So we recognize, of course, that the vacancy is going to be relatively low. Citywide vacancy at the reference date is 3.8%. Of course, that changes depending on what part of town we're in and suite mix and that sort of thing. But typically we have accepted a reasonably low vacancy rate that's been put forth by the city. And that is because typically these properties, even in a market perspective, based on the area, based on some of these negative factors that we've quite I think we've pointed out quite properly, would rent on the lower scale of the market. Now, typically the rents that are applied here equate to about 75 to 80% of the of CMHC average, and we think that's fine. In terms of the expenses, well, expenses in social housing are exceptionally high. But if we were to sort of do the theoretical or go through the exercise of looking at this property as a market property, you might say, well, maybe those would be more in tune with the market expense ratio. So you're quite right. We have accepted the NOI, but all of these other factors need to be captured somewhere, and we've captured them in the cap rate. So and that's going to be for a number of the properties here today. I will point out the ones that are social and the ones that are market. So, okay, we've established that we're on Dufferin Avenue. This is family row housing. There's 4 buildings on site. Location is an issue quite clearly. We have a map here on page 5. Again, we have a low parking ratio. We have wood frame commercial row houses. So that would be considered, let's call it utility grade builds. That's again, multiple buildings come with an increased risk profile. Social housing, there's no amenities here. This is sort of Spartan or utilitarian living. The property is built in 1989, so we've got well, it's 30. Let's see here, 31. So 35 years old or so, with no history of economic profit. Condition would be considered inferior. Location is typically considered inferior. These properties tend to incur more, let's say, wear and tear than other properties that are rented in the private market. And we'll talk a little bit today about supply and demand. The multifamily inventory at the reference date is saturated. There's a large amount of new supply coming on stream. So effectively, some of the older product and some of the product without amenities may not fare as well marching into the future. So we do consider that the older properties without any amenities may become somewhat, or the obsolescence may come a little faster than it would have in regular times. We do see a huge amount of new inventory coming on stream. So I'll do this once, but we have our cap rate study. Now I'm concerned that the city has not provided any calculations or workups for their cap rates. We've given you our entire cap rate study. We have all the workups. We've provided our methodology in full. I'll go through it once, and Mr. Chair, I will ask if this does carry forward to the balance of our docket. There'll be some considerations for social and some considerations for market, but I'll go through this once. So I mentioned this is on page 2 of our cap rate study. When we're looking at the new assessments that come out, the first thing that we're going to do is look at the City of Winnipeg's document that's called the Valuation of Income Producing Properties 2023 General Assessment, where they state the cap rates for apartments range from 3.85 to 7.4%. Now, we are going to be on the higher end. I'm going to suggest that some of these social properties are in the 7% range today, including the subject that we're talking about. And that makes sense when we look at the entire swath that the city is suggesting. Okay, we look at the market reports, and we can see here that the change in terms of cap rate compression from the previous cycle to this cycle is very low. It's typically between 0 to 25 basis points, and most of the compression is on the latest and greatest, let's say, the better, newer, amenity-rich properties. Now, that is likely due to the fact that there is so much new supply coming on stream. So, now, we should note, too, that the brokers' reports were typically suggesting market caps between 5 and 6% as a general rule, as a general basis, may be skewed by the fact that there are closing costs included, typically for at least for Colliers to be certain. And when we include those, we tend to see an increase of about 15 basis points. But regardless, we use the brokers' reports as something of a barometer with respect to cap rate compression cycle over cycle. Okay, now we also, when we're looking at the properties that we represent, we look at the various factors that affect the cap rate. Now, the cap rate obviously is in its most basic terms, is the numerical assessment of risk. A higher cap rate clearly would denote a higher risk property. So we look at type and construction. I've mentioned here, if you have multiple buildings on site, that's less efficient. Garden apartments are less efficient than towers that are 10 or 11 stories high. And multiple buildings, of course, row houses, more systems per door, more roof area to maintain, more land to maintain, quite frankly. That comes with a higher risk profile. So we do consider that. Heritage status is not under debate today, but we would recognize that typically heritage status does amount to a caveat on title, and there are some issues with permitting around that we would consider, but that doesn't appear to be a factor. Amenities. Now, one thing that we've noticed in our research cycle over cycle is that tenant preferences have changed. More people are working from home, we all know that. And that's a trend that predated COVID, but was indeed obviously amplified by it. Due to this and other factors, there has been a growing preference for things like balconies and outdoor spaces, walk-up access, office spaces or den, business spaces, gyms, the types of amenities that we're going to see in the new builds. We consider the durability and the quality of income. Now, excuse me, we're going to be talking about, as I mentioned, a number of social housing properties here today. And the durability and the quality of income is going to be tantamount. This is going to be a very, very important factor. These properties, if they were to rent on the open market, we have to recognize that there's a history of no economic profit. Typically, there will be deferred maintenance. And going forward, these properties would be considered let's say a budget proposition, they're not going to turn into, they're not going to rent on the high end of the scale. Let's say that. So in terms of the durability of the income going forward and the quality of the income, in social, to be certain, those would be considered negative factors. Age, condition, parking, these are all factors that we've touched on here. Parking is a big one. You're not going to achieve a very high rent if there's no parking. Clearly, if you have townhouses with no parking, that is going to be a problem. The suite mix. Now, this is an interesting something that's changed. We are seeing vacancy declining for 2 bedrooms and increasing for 1 bedrooms and bachelors. That has typically not been the case. In the past, in the Winnipeg real estate market, we have seen a large appetite for bachelors and 1 bedroom suites. And again, and this is largely due, I'm going to suggest to you based on this tenant preference shift, that obviously the 2 bedroom market is doing better than we've seen in the past, and we've included that those vacancy rates from CMHC as a general guide. Suite sizes, clearly more people are at home, they want bigger suites. The number of suites, now this is where we're at odds with the city. I don't think there's anything on the docket today, but we would suggest to you that having a very, very low number of suites would equate to more risk, clearly. Location and external factors, obviously the driving factor of real estate, as we all know, is location. So we have to consider where these properties are in terms of their value and their risk profile. I've mentioned supply and demand. I have a whole section here. We can go through it if you'd like, but suffice it to say that we have been tracking all development applications and permits since the previous cycle, and we can tell you when I mentioned that the supply and demand, or the supply is outpacing demand, we see that, and that's based on what we'll call the development pipeline. The new units that are coming on stream. Sorry, I'm just going to find it in my brief here. It is quite interesting, I think. The panel will find it illuminating. It's on page 38. And we can see, for example, in the Northwest, where we are here today, pre-2021, we have 728 units, with 700 more coming on stream. That's extraordinary. In the Northeast, there was only 153 market rentals, with 480 new coming on stream. Central, there are 1,050 with 392 coming on stream, so that's more typical. In the Southwest, just a touch over 1,500 existing with 1,700 new coming on stream. And in the Southeast, just a touch over 400 existing with just a touch below 600 new units coming on stream. So clearly there is a rush in supply. We will see how demand reacts, but if you are an owner at this stage, particularly an owner of an older property, that should give you some pause and some concern. So with all of that being said, and I thank you for your attention to this, I'll reference this study throughout our docket today, but those are the some of the assumptions and the studies that we've done to inform our cap rate conclusions. So with all of that taken into consideration, we are suggesting that a 6.25 cap for this property may be typical of market, but it is not indeed considering, it doesn't appear to take into consideration social housing. So we are indeed applying a cap rate of 7%, no less than 7%. And even that may be somewhat optimistic, but we're comfortable with the resulting quantum, which is 2,465,329, which we then round to 2,465,000. And just very, I have photos here. You can see this property. You know, this is again North End. Drive by it every day, yeah, it's on Dufferin Avenue. So not to put too fine a point on that. We have another one that's going to be almost exactly the same. So just one last point, and again, I'll do this once, Mr. Chair. Page 15 of my chief evidence brief talks about our cap rates for affordable housing. We have the municipal board order A02330, and it quotes an excerpt from the appraisal journal, which states that low investment grade apartments warrant a higher yield and overall rate than conventional apartment properties. The applicable rates tend to rise with the presence of each of the four characteristics attributable to these properties. Low cost or low quality construction. Well, then that's what I've mentioned here. We have utility grade properties, wood frame, advanced age. We're not totally in the advanced age section here, but okay, that's one factor to be considered to consider. Declining or blighted neighborhood, and then low income tenancy. That's a quote from them. There's a high operating expense ratio and a low net income stream with increased variability of the income stream. Changes in gross income or expenses have a greater relative impact on net income when the rent levels are low. So that's what we've summarized as no history of economic profit. And then again, I've included two decisions here where agents have effectively argued for 50 to 100 basis points. I think it's might even be more, but regardless, they are suggesting that precisely what we've suggested here today is that these social housing properties ought to be recognized as higher risk properties from a market perspective, and then the cap rate should be adjusted upward from what we'll call the market rate. And that's also for these social housing properties. I'll leave these with you. They're in all of the social briefs that we have today. And of course, those decisions were accepted. Typically, what we see, and this goes back 20 years now, the assessor will occasionally say, "Well, we've put the rents down low and we've put the expenses up high," but they don't tend to recognize the low income or social housing in the cap rate. The municipal board has told us that we should. We do, and that is going to form the crux of our arguments here today. So I promise you the rest of these will go much quicker, but that is the crux of our argument here today, is that a 6.25 might be a market cap rate, but it does not indeed capture the added risk of social housing. So we are requesting for this property that a cap rate of no less than 7% be applied, with a resulting market value of $2,465,000. And with that, I welcome your questions and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Vanderema, questions of Mr. Story?
I have none for now.
Okay. Ms. Duncan?
I have a couple. Do you have any comparables within your evidence?
Comparables in terms of rent comparables?
Yes.
No, because we've accepted the city's market rent because we think it is good practice to look to CMHC and apply typically 75 to 80% of the CMHC rents. So I haven't, because it's not in they're not in dispute. So no, I haven't, but we haven't just sort of blindly accepted it. We've accepted the methodology of taking the general CMHC rents for the area and then reducing them slightly, and that's our methodology is consistent with the assessor here. So it is something we do agree on. So it's one thing we do agree on for this.
I see. In the one chart, you assess the property as being the condition of it being inferior. Just based on the pictures, it seems to be a pretty well maintained property. Why would you consider it inferior in condition?
Well, typically, okay, so I wouldn't say that it's in, well, okay. Typically these properties, as I mentioned, I didn't have the opportunity to inspect this one, but I go through a number of these properties. They tend to take a great deal of wear and tear. They do tend to have a higher expense ratio. So I suppose that we've accepted the expense ratio here, because if you look, and I'll just take you very quickly to page 11 of my brief, we've accepted a market expense of stabilized at 152,668, same as the assessor. But if you look at 18, 19, and 20, it is substantially higher. So, and you can see that they're operating at a deficit. So typically condition would be considered inferior for these properties. And that's just, that's sort of a reality of most of these types of properties. It's a great question. I appreciate it.
Thanks. And then the other one, let me see if I can articulate this correctly. it's a social housing property. And so I guess my question would be, and I thought maybe you had acknowledged it earlier, that typically based on more favorable rents, there's usually, if not a wait list, that the vacancy rate is very low for those types of properties. Yet in the supply and demand portion of the assessment of your evidence, it talks about the market being oversaturated with multifamily, but that makes it sound like you're speaking to all multifamily, including all types of apartments versus social housing, which my understanding based on your conversations earlier is there's an acknowledgement that the social housing is does not fall into that there's usually a wait list.
Yeah, precisely. So, okay, so just to be very clear, the study that we've done is on market apartments. Now, the point of our hearing today is to take this property from a fee simple perspective and to say, okay, let's say that this is just the building, let's say, and we're not considering the fact you're not going to purchase it and run it as social housing. You're going to purchase it as a market investor. That's the theoretical exercise that we're asked to conduct today, where we're going to say, well, yes, obviously social housing, it's a rent geared to income scenario, so it's not a true rent. But if this property were to be rented theoretically on the open market, we're suggesting as the assessors that the rents would be low and that vacancy would maybe even be lower than market. Market vacancy is about 3.8% right now. But obviously, there's a larger tenant pool as rents go down. Vacancy typically goes up when rents go up, or if the physical characteristics are such that there's not a huge pool, like 3-4 bedrooms, something like that. So yes, you're absolutely correct. Social housing tends to have a waiting list, but we're not valuing this as a social housing asset, but rather as how the market would view this. So we agree that these would be the market rents. I mean, if you look at what the actual rents would be, for example, if you look at my chart here, the effective gross rent, what's actually being achieved is, I mean, it's less than half of what we're suggesting, right? And if you look at the bottom of the NOI, it runs at a deficit of about 15 grand to 20 grand per year, right? So we're not suggesting that we value it on that basis because we frankly have a negative value. So what we do is we say, okay, we're going to depress the rent slightly, as the city does as well. We're agreeing with that. We're going to say that the vacancy based on low rents is going to be lower. But the cap rate and the expense ratio, I mean, the expense ratio is run over 100% in actuality. So we're trying to look from a market perspective, but the thing that we're not capturing, or what the city is not capturing in our opinion, is that cap rate. That's a market cap rate that should capture some of these other social factors. So sorry for the long-winded answer, but I just want to make sure that we're clear that the vacancy is a market application. If we were to use the actual, we'd end up in a negative position.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just seemed that there was a blurring of, okay, on this part it's assessed as market, on this part it's assessed as social, and it just seemed to kind of jump back and forth depending on where your argument lied. So I just wanted to kind of clarify.
We are trying to look at a market perspective for a property. That's where it's an interesting experiment, because we have to look at a social housing property and then put ourselves in the eyes of a prudent purchaser and determine what how the market would view this. So that's the nature of the experiment today.
Yeah. I understand that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Warhan, you're muted. Oh, you're okay. Ms. Warhan, any questions of this, Mr. Story?
Nope. Michelle asked the question that I wanted to ask, so I'm good.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, I'm just looking at your cap rate that you're using. You're using 7%. And
Correct.
you had mentioned about, maybe, has this been increased from, maybe 1/4 or 0.5% due to, the location and the subject property at all?
From the baseline?
Yes.
Well, see, it's interesting. If we were to look at it, if it weren't social, it would be, I would say, probably a minimum of 6.5, 6.75. So I would suggest to you that we're probably adjusting it by 25 to 50 basis points. We would, regardless of the social issue, we would be looking at location. In the past, row housing had a minimum. Now, row housing with one set of buildings would be 6% at a minimum. We have 4. So there are a number of factors that would give a prudent investor, if somebody who's looking to purchase this property, there are a number of factors that would give them some pause, presumably. So, yes, that's a great question. I think that if it were market, we'd be somewhere in the 6.5 to 6.75. But I think that based on all of the different factors that we've looked at here today, 7% is reasonable. And we note too that the city, even in their market analysis, is saying that the high end is 7.4, and that's typically a function of age and location. And I think Mr. Boardroom said size. So 7% feels very comfortable, and the resulting quantum is makes sense, frankly. So yes.
All right. So to summarize, I guess what you're doing on this property, and it's probably going to be applicable to the next property too. So you're increasing it by a 0.25 or 0.50.
Somewhere in that range, yes. I obviously we didn't do a market analysis to begin with, but yes, we're increasing it. We are increasing it above market. So yeah, I think we're somewhere in that 0.25 to 0.5, and the decisions that we've provided you here today are a fair bit higher, quite frankly, in terms of the adjustment. But quite frankly, there is probably an adjustment from the city on location or some such thing. So we're not worlds away, but we think 7% is makes sense.
I thank you, Mr. Story. Either party want a summation?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Story.
No, I think we've said it all on this property. So thank you very much.
So I think both sides have discussed in depth, their presentations, and so maybe we can speed up things because we've heard what is applicable to cap rates, etc. So we'll go to the next property, which is again on Dufferin Street. We'll go to 519. So Mr. Vanderema, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next property has a file number of 22-1061. It has a roll number of 14002043000. Property is located at 519 Dufferin Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $1,537,000. The property is classified as a residential 2 with a liability of grant. The property is residential apartments with 2 buildings, 3 stories, and an actual and effective year built of 1978. It has 20 suites with 10 outdoor parking. It is zoned as a residential 2 family. It has a land area of 29,409 square feet, a planned area of 7,000 square feet, and a gross floor area of 17,770 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. And on page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, there are 20 units with average monthly rent per unit of $804.72. It has a gross potential rent of $193,133. There's a vacancy rate of 3.2% or $6,180. It has an effective gross income of $186,953. It has an expense ratio of 47.8% or $89,364, giving it a net operating income of $97,589. Using the capitalization rate of 6.35%, the capitalized income is $1,536,835 or $1,537,000. On next page, page 5, are some rent comparables. First one, I believe, Mr. Chair, these are all the same as the previous property that we discussed. And on page 7, the capitalization rates chart, and on page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence chart. And beginning on page 9 to page 16 is the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
I thank you kindly. Mr. Story, questions of the assessor?
Yes, just very quickly, and Mr. Chair, I will ask that the questions that I asked on the previous file carry forward. This is a very, very similar property with some slight variations. But Mr. Valderrama, just to point this out, can we agree that this should also be typified by the model as row house?
It is a residential apartment, so that's what the model, the parameters that was used.
Okay, I'm aware of that, but this is physically, the physical asset is indeed a row house, correct?
Without inspecting, just looking at the pictures, or the picture that I have, the aerial photo, looks like there's some separate entrances, so probably it would qualify as a row housing.
It's a row house, so okay, and then it has a similar issue with parking and similar issue with location. Can we agree on that?
It's in the same area as the previous property.
It's right down the street. And then it also has similar agents and similar construction type, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And again, Mr. Chair, I think I'll ask my previous questions carry forward. So I'll leave that there, and I thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Duncan?
Just to clarify, this is not a social housing property, though, is that correct?
Ma'am, it is owned by Manitoba Housing also, so I would think that this is a social housing as well.
And then it's something I could have asked on the last one as well. If the city was to assess it based on social housing, how would that change your cap rate? I know it's a little bit more of a general question, but would your cap rate change if you were assessing it as social housing, or did you assess it as social housing?
The assessment that we do is based on market evidence. So the model is deriving all of these parameters based on what the market is right now.
So it doesn't have anything
as of April 1st, 2021.
Right. So the model doesn't do anything different for social housing. It's all just based on market, right?
It's taken it into account of when it is area, location, and age, or area or location, age, and size. But in terms of social housing, it gives it a little bit of a I think a lower parameter upon review, if this was reviewed or if there were any reviews done.
So on this one, would that have been done on this one? There would have been a lower review because of the social housing component?
I do think it is reviewed, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Warhan?
None, thank you.
Okay, I thank you. Mr. Vanderama, why wouldn't you use the same cap rate as the previous property?
Again, this is a model-derived cap rate, I believe 6.35. So again, three of among the factors, I mean, there are three: the age, location, and size. So given those three, I probably would think that there's only 20 units on this one compared to the previous one that has more.
Plus, this one here is 11 years, I guess, older.
Yes, also, yeah.
Okay. All right, I thank you. Mr. Story, your presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. And just to be clear, this is indeed another social housing asset. It's almost identical to the one we just looked at down the street. It is indeed row housing. It does have many of the same issues. Mr. Chair, you're quite right. It is slightly older, but similar vintage. I would suggest to you in the eyes of the market, the risk profile would be the same. I think you're correct in questioning why we wouldn't have the same cap rate. So again, our NOI is the same, and we have applied the 7% cap rate. That's on our page 12. You can see that the expenses here are exceptionally high based on what's actually coming in. But again, we've not looked at the actuals. If we were to use the actuals, we'd be in a position where we'd be looking at land only. We'd be capitalizing a negative value. So now you've asked if the I don't quite understand when the assessor is saying that upon review the value would be lower. That doesn't make sense. The cap rate should be higher than market. So we have applied a 7% cap rate. It's above market. It's commensurate with the fact that this is indeed social housing. It's row housing. It's in the north end. It's down the street from the tracks. We have the municipal board orders suggesting that this is the appropriate methodology. I don't know if I pointed this out before, but we also have some literature on that from Mr. Richard Polton from the Appraisal Institute suggesting that this methodology is supported. So ultimately, I think that we are discovering here that the model is not indeed capturing the realities of social housing. And so we have done that with, we don't do a modeled approach. We do this by hand. We look at these individually, and our analysis has concluded that a 7% cap rate, as it was appropriate for the previous, is appropriate here. And we are suggesting a value today of $1,394,000. So again, we do respectfully submit this this assessment not exceed $1,394,000. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Vanderema, questions?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Ms. Duncan?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rohan?
None, thank you.
Summation, either party?
None for me, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I think we're good to proceed, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, let's go to the next property, which is 519 Richmond Street. Mr. Valderrama, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next property has a file number of 22-2136. The property has a roll number of 12-080-035-100. It is located at 519 Richmond Street. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023, using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $2,788,000. The property is classified as a residential 2 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 1 building and 3 stories. It has an actual and effective year built of 1964. It has 29 suites with 14 outdoor parking. It is zoned as residential 2 family. It has a land area of 12,904 square feet. Land area of 4,712 square feet. Basement area of 7,992 square feet. And a gross floor area of 23,768 square feet. And on page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. On page 4, you have the income valuation summary. Again, there are 29 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $835.70. The gross potential rent is $290,824. The vacancy rate is 3.2%. The vacancy in terms of dollars is $9,306. The effective gross income is $281,518. Has an expense ratio of 49%, giving it an expense in terms of dollars of $137,944, or The property has a net operating income of $143,574. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.15%, the capitalized income is $2,787,845, or $2,788,000. Next page, page 5, are some rent comparables. The first one is located at 530 Tilehurst Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $919. The next one is located at 1918 Portage Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $917. The third one is located at 516 Tilehurst Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $855. And the last one is located at 2193 Portage Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $850. Next page is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. On page 7 is the capitalization rate chart, and on page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. Beginning of page 9 to page 15 is the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, just a few. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, Mr. Boardroom, just to be very clear, this is not social housing. This is indeed a market apartment, correct?
I'm just basing it on the owner, and it looks like it is, and the liability. So looks like it is.
Okay. All right. And the actual year built is 64, and the effective year built is also 1964, correct? Yes. Okay. And we have, for a market apartment, again, now this is not atypical of older apartments from the 60s, but we do have we don't have a 1-to-1 parking ratio for the suites, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And can we agree that this suite mix would not be considered terribly desirable given what we know about the market at April 1, 2021? It's predominant, well, it's almost exclusively one bedrooms with 4 bachelor suites. That's not commensurate with the tenant preferences of the reference state. Is that your understanding?
I wouldn't be able to answer the question. There's so much assumptions going on in that question, so I wouldn't be able to answer that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well, it's okay. I don't think there's assumptions, or I think that's fine. Okay. So in terms of okay, let's just back up. Yeah, page 4. This is all model derived, correct?
Yes, these are all model derived parameters.
Did you look at the income and expense mailers that were submitted by the owner?
Income and expense are attached. 2020.
Okay, but did you consider them when this property was appealed? Did you consider the actual income, the actual expenses to determine if they were appropriate when looking at what the model has generated?
I'm looking at the market on this one, so I'm looking at it from the market perspective in terms of the model. So I considered the model on this one.
Okay, so that's interesting. So let's just look to page 5 here. Can we agree that apartments in Winnipeg, the rents are controlled by the RTB? Is that correct?
Rent increases, yes.
Okay, well, okay, rent increases, but that's okay. But so I guess I have a question about the methodology that's being employed by the city here. You're using rental comps to determine an appropriate rent for the subject, as opposed to just looking at the rents that are actually being achieved that are indeed governed by the RTB. Is that correct?
I'm not sure of the question, Mr. Chair, but I'm just looking at the rent comparables here, and they seem to be supporting and not really to.
Okay, well, sorry, you said you don't understand the question. Let me state it again. I'm asking you if what you're doing here is looking at other properties to determine the rent in the subject property, as opposed to looking to the actual rents in the subject property. Is that what's happening here?
Again, this is a model derived rent, so I'm not really choosing the rent for this property, and I'm just looking at rent comparables if the rent produced by the model is supported by the market.
Okay, and just to get to your answer in a roundabout way, you're not looking at the actuals, correct?
I looked at it and I still considered the market or the model.
Okay, and did you look at the expenses?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all right. And that cap rate is model derived as well, I'm presuming?
Yes, they are all model parameters.
All model derived, okay. And, okay. Well, I think those are my questions, Mr. Chair. I will speak to my concerns in my presentation. Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Story. I think you'll get a chance to make your case in regards to actual, so we'll.
Thank you, sir. Yep.
Ms. Duncan, questions?
Was there any permits taken out on this property? It's a pretty old property. Any improvements done since 1964 that you're aware of?
I wasn't able to check on the permits on this one, ma'am. So I'm not aware of any.
Okay, and then there wouldn't have been an in-person inspection then?
No, I wasn't able to inspect the property.
Okay, that's it for questions. Thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Warhan?
None, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Vanderama, I guess due to COVID, you haven't inspected these properties at all or anything?
Yeah, some time constraints to.
I have one question for you. You might be able to answer it. If not, the applicant will in his presentation. Do you know whether this is the 4-story? Is it a walk-up or does it have an elevator?
I'm not sure if it has an elevator. From the aerial photo, I don't see any.
Yeah, I
From the
can
exterior?
ask Mr. Story. Mr. Story, can you answer that question? Do you know?
Well, I can't say for certain. I haven't been inside, but my best sort of educated guess is that no, it most likely would not have an elevator for a property of this vintage with 4 stories. I would suggest to you that it's almost a 3.5 story. Those are basement apartments on the wall. So that would typically be considered a walk-up, Mr. Chair, and I don't believe there's an elevator.
All right, I thank you. I think, all right, I don't have any further questions. Mr. Story, your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So here we are at on Richmond. This is a 3.5 story masonry structure. It's between Wolseley and Portage Avenue in the West Wolseley section of River Heights. It was built in '64. It's being used as multifamily residential. It is indeed a market apartment. That now again I've pointed out, and I think in my overall discussion about the cap rates and the cap rate study, the suite mix would be considered inferior. We have no amenities, and we also have 4 1-bedroom suites. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong mix here. It should be 4 bachelors and 25 1-bedroom. There's an error in my brief, but the city is correct with that. Those 29. Okay. So we have looked to the actual income and expenses for this property. Now for market apartments, the way that we approach these is we take 3 years, the 3 relevant years leading up to the reference date. This is typical of market. It's consistent with valuation and appraisal theory. We look to the income, and then we look to stabilize the expenses into what we'll call a typical year. We use the most current year for income. So you'll see that, and this is on page 10 of my workup. On page 10, you see that the potential gross market rents at the reference date are indeed 246 to 20. In the previous years, they were 236 and 230. Nowhere near the 290 that's being suggested by the assessor. So this is where we're questioning why you would defer to a model as opposed to looking at the actuals. Vacancy is reasonably high, with an average over 3 years of 9%. And sometimes there's renos on turnover, things like that. So we've deferred to a market vacancy because typically we don't want to see assessments that are going up and down like a roller coaster year over year. We want to stabilize vacancy over the effective useful life of the asset. 3.2 admittedly is a bit low, but it's fine for this property. We think that's reasonable, if not optimistic. So then we have our effective gross rent calculation, which is 238,341. We do recognize that we pick up some incidental cash flow by way of laundry collection, and that's captured here. Again, this is all actuals. So in 2020, they report $5,400 in laundry collection, so we've included that in our workup. But you'll see that when we come to our AGI, our effective gross income, the actuals are suggesting to us a figure of 243,741. So we're still a ways away from the model at 281,518. Okay, so now we get into the expenses. Insurance, again, that is actual. We use the most current year. Insurance premiums it would not be appropriate to blend them or average them over years. They tend to go up, and as we've seen in the past few years, insurance is really going up a fair bit. Here they're showing us that it's going down for some reason, so that may be some sort of atypical year, but we are using it, and that's fine. The management fee is 5% of the effective gross income. That is commensurate with market. That's not typically been disputed. We have office supplies, wages and benefits are not, well, actually wages and benefits for the administration and advertising and leasing has not been quantified by the owner, so we've not included anything. We use the actuals for the utilities. We use the most current year. Again, just like insurance, typically utility costs are going up, so it would probably depress them if we average them out. So we're using the most current year. Waste and snow, that's average. That's very low. You can see they reported for 1 year, but our system has suggested 217. Should probably be 650. That's fine. It's a difference of $400, so that's okay. The repair and maintenance is 13,600, and then we have caretaking, wages and benefits, and then of course we have the real estate taxes. So the total expenses calculate out to 126,507. We do note that the city's expenses are higher, but their ratio is lower because their effective gross income is modeled higher. But what we're seeing here is that the NOI, based on the actuals, stabilized over 3 years with the best info that we have as submitted by the owner. And this is submitted not to us, but rather to the city. So the city has all this information as well. They've deferred to the model. We've done an analysis. Our NOI is 117,234, and we've used a cap rate of 5.5%. Now, I've mentioned before that typically the cap rates that we're seeing in the city of Winnipeg, the range typically falls between 5 to 6%. This is an early 1960s walk-up, 3.5 stories. This is a very typical middle of the road type building. It has some issues, including the suite mix and whatnot, but the location is generally good. So overall, we're comfortable with a cap rate right down the middle of that 5 to 6%, and we are applying 5.5%. So that gives us a resulting value rounded to $2,132,000. And again, that's based on a cap rate of 5.5% and with the application of the actual income and expenses. And the balance of my brief is we have the city summary, and then we also have the actual income and expenses that were submitted that we've used to inform our position here today. And I would ask that you defer to the actuals as opposed to the model in this case. And I thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Randorama.
Yeah, just a quick one, Mr. Chair. Just noticed for 2018 to 2020 income and expense information here, would you agree that the effective gross income and the total expenses seem to be erratic, particularly between 2019 to 2020?
They're erratic.
They are kind of far apart. I mean, the increases are just so drastic.
Right. So that's why we've stabilized them. Right. So that's yes. So I don't know that I'd say that they're erratic, but in 2020 we see higher expenses to be certain. But remember, we've stabilized that column where it says subject stabilized. So though they may seem, well, they're very low in 18 and 19, they're sub 40%. In one case, the expenses are sub 35%, but we've used 51.9 once they're stabilized. So that is the precise reason why we employ the methodology of stabilizing into that year. And frankly, our expenses are lower than what the city's applied. So I think we're well in range.
So
The main issue here, Mr. Boardroom, is that the city is overshooting the rents by a great deal. And the cap rate is undersung as well. But I think the major glaring issue here when you compare our positions is the city, the model. I know it's not your work, it's just the model is overshooting these rents, and that's quite obvious.
And I was just looking at the expenses. The stabilized says, or the average says 86,000, and you stabilized it at 126,507. So I just, would that be something different? Would your stabilizations would have done something different compared to the average of 86,684 of expenses?
Oh, well, okay, so first of all, that average, okay, so there's two main issues there. We've got the, okay, so the management fee, they're not including, you'll see, and that's $12,000. We've also got, we have the, I should say, in that average year, repair and maintenance, that's very low. That's $469 a door. That's exceptionally low. That's 4,200 is recorded in 2020 as we've used in the stabilization, but it's about a third of that because our system is averaging it out in 18. We would not use that number. That would be far too. I'm sorry, that's on wages and benefits. But similarly on repair and maintenance, that's another one where if you look at that average, it's very low. So when you go line by line through the income and expense mailers, and when you stabilize them, you'll see that this makes sense. And frankly, we are within 2 points. So the ratio of 49 to 51% makes sense. The major issue here, again, and I can't stress this enough, is that the rents that are being achieved are not anywhere near the rents that the city is suggesting. That's the major crux of the issue.
And that's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Ms. Duncan, questions of the applicant?
Yeah, just again, are you aware of any renovations or major capital improvements that would have been done since 1964 with it?
Great question. I'm sure it doesn't have shag carpets and wood paneling on the walls, but when we look at the effective year built, typically apartments, in order to subtend the rents that they're achieving, have to have some cosmetic upgrades. And nobody's suggesting that this is true to the vintage of 60 years. But when we look at the effective year, what we're really looking at is things like the foundation, the building envelope, what we'll call the bones of the building. So I don't have any details about any sort of permits, but typically, and it's a great question, typically the quality of the interior, the rents will typically be a function of the quality of the interior. So not that I'm aware of, but I'm not suggesting that there's been no work since 1964. That would be, the general useful life of a property like this is about 60 to 80 years or so. So they would have had to do some work at some point. But again, and that's, I think that we're right on point with that middle of the road cap rate of 5.5, and the rents are effectively what they are. So not aware of any refreshes, but I'm not suggesting that there aren't. I'm sure that it's in a state where they're generating rents.
And then my other question was, and I might not have heard you correctly earlier on, but you had talked about the suite mix and that CMHC stats have indicated there's been a higher demand for one bedrooms, which isn't the norm as in the past. So as far as this one with 25 one bedrooms, that would be considered a good suite mix based on.
No, I'm sorry. I indicated that there's less of a demand for one bedroom because the tenant preference is for more space and more amenities. 2-bedroom would be the most desirable. So bachelors in 1-bedroom, the reason why we've not made an adjustment to the cap rate here. It's just something to point out that at this stage, at the reference date of April 1, 2021, bachelors in 1-bedrooms were not performing to the same degree as 2-bedrooms. Whereas in the past, 1-bedroom, that was typically in the past, those were the most sort of the big ticket item. That has since shifted, and it has something to do with COVID, to be certain, but also just tenant preferences that have changed over time. People are looking for, again, more amenities and more space. So we see a decline in 2-bedroom vacancy and an increase in bachelor and 1-bedroom vacancy. So when I say that this is a poor suite mix, it's because we don't have any 2-bedroom suites here. That's not a good thing.
Okay, I must have misheard you on the last part.
No problem.
Thank you. That's it for questions.
I thank you. Ms. Warhan?
Okay, just to clarify, I guess I got mixed up here. You have 4 1-bedroom suites, am I right?
No, I'm sorry, that's a typo in my brief. It's 4 bachelors and 25 1-bedroom. It's
Okay.
yeah, no, that's an error on my part, and I apologize.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I thought
Yeah.
I didn't hear it. Okay, thank you so
Right.
much.
You're welcome.
I thank you. Mr. Story, the City of Winnipeg has got the gross for this property at $290,000.
Yeah.
Close to 291. Your stabilized gross is what, 246, 220?
Sounds exactly right. Let me just pull it up here. Yes, so that is and again, that's just to be very clear though, we always use the most current year's income. So you can see in 18, it was 230. In 2019, it was 236. And in 2020, it was 246, 220. So we've used 246, 220. We tend to stabilize expenses that where it makes sense. But expenses where the most current year makes sense, such as insurance and property taxes, and of course utilities, we use the most current year. And similarly for income, we use the most current year, because if you put yourself in the shoes of a buyer, you're not buying a blended rate of the previous year's income. You're buying the income stream that is based on the most current year. So that is our methodology. So yes, at the reference year, the last full year leading up to the reference date, the income was 246, 220. I'm not sure how the model generates 290, but it is indeed 246, 220, and that's a real number.
So basically, you are saying that the model is high by approximately $45,000.
Yeah, that's correct. But well, I should say though, if we go down to the EGI, we are recognizing, well, the vacancy, let's use a market vacancy. So that takes our 246 to 238, but we add some some laundry revenue in there. So it's a difference between 243 to 281 on the effective gross income side. So that is a large that's a delta that is it's an issue, but I suppose the issue here is those are the real numbers versus the mystery of how the model determines these assessments. But that's why we're here today. That's part of it. And the cap rate, I would also suggest, is extremely low for a property of this vintage.
I thank you, Mr. Story.
Thank you.
Either party wants summation?
Nope, just
For me.
again, I just would ask that you defer to the actuals as opposed to the model, as that would be the how the market would treat this property. The next prudent purchaser would look at these numbers, and that would inform their decision. And I thank you.
All right. I thank you. We're going to do one more, and we're going to go to 289 Pacific Avenue. And I think what we'll probably do is there's a non-compliance issue, so we'll deal with that.
Mr. Chair, I won't be pursuing that.
You will not be pursuing that? Okay. So that you will withdraw?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So how about if we take probably about a 10-minute break? Is
Sounds
that
good.
okay with everybody? Mr.
Yes, that sounds good.
Story? Jazz, okay. We'll shut it down and we'll reconvene at 10:40.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
And Jared, you can grab a coffee somewhere.
Run down the street.
Maybe, yeah. Well, we'll give you 10 minutes, okay?
Good night, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jaswinder. All right, we'll call the hearing back to order, and the property that we're gonna deal with is 289 Pacific Avenue. Mr. Vanderalma, whenever you're ready, you can take us through this property. And just for the record, you are not seeking the non-co-op issue, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property is a file number of 22-1592. It has a roll number of 13080122000. The property is located at 289 Pacific Avenue. Dealing with the roll year of 2023, using reference date of April 1st, 2021, the assessed value is $5,447,000. The property is classified as a residential 2 with the liability of grant. The property is a residential apartment with one building, 13 stories, with an actual and effective year built of 1978. It has 88 suites with 5 outdoor parking. It is zoned as character with land area of 8,922 square feet, a planned area of 2,579 square feet, and a gross floor area of 55,969 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. On page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, there are 88 units with $641.03 for an average monthly rent per unit. It has a gross potential rent of $676,928. It has a vacancy rate of 3.2% or $21,662. Has an effective gross income of $655,266. An expense ratio of 53.45% or $350,240. It has a net operating income of $305,026. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.6%, the capitalized income is $5,446,893 or $5,447,000. Next page, page 5, are some rent comparables. First one is located at 1633 Nordame Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $632. Second one is located at 415 Logan Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $758. Third one is located at 1485 Nordame Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $725. And the last one is located at 1551 Notre Dame Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $589. And on the next page is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. On page 7 is the capitalization rate chart. On page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. And beginning of page 9 to page 15 is the 2020 income and expense mailer for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, just a few, Mr. Chair, and we're gonna sort of keep this to cap rate again. Mr. Valderrama, can we agree this is indeed social housing?
Based on the ownership and the liability, yes, it is. I haven't inspected this too.
Okay, oh, that's fine. So can we agree that this is purpose-built social housing? So this is a property that was built specifically for social housing in Chinatown, correct?
I am not sure. I'm not aware of that. I have no information
Okay.
about that.
Now, I guess one of the glaring issues here is that we've got 88 suites and 5 parking stalls. Is that considered a negative in the city's model? Does the model consider that?
Well, I'm not sure how the model considered the parking stalls.
Okay, all right. Okay, now, in terms of the suite mix, well, that's still fresh in our mind. We just discussed the tenant preferences to move to larger suites. Can we agree that these are typically very small suites?
I'm sorry, what was that?
These suites are typically quite small. Are you aware of that?
Well, based on the gross floor area, it's 636 per unit, square feet per unit. So I'm not sure. You're just looking at one bedroom, one bedroom units and bachelor units. I think this is pretty
Oh,
typical.
okay. But can we agree, though, that that calculation may be erroneous because if there's any common area in this property, I believe there is, basically what the city's done is taken the gross floor area and simply divided it by the number of suites. And that's how you've come to that. That's the mathematics at play here, correct? So it doesn't include any vertical penetrations, stairs or elevators, and it doesn't include any common area, correct? Hallways.
It is a mathematical calculation, so I'm not sure where the error is there. If there are any, it's just using a different parameter or characteristics.
Okay, well, I'll try. I just want to make sure that the board is aware of this. When the city suggests the gross floor area per unit of 636, all you're doing is taking the gross floor area of 55,969 and dividing it by 88, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, but in that building and in that gross floor area, there's going to be common area. There's going to be elevators. There's going to be what we call vertical penetrations for stairwells, hallways, things like that, correct?
Correct.
And that would cause an erosion to what you're suggesting at 636. So indeed, the suite sizes would be a touch lower than 636, correct?
Yeah, it could be lower than 636, correct.
Okay, and can we agree, or I don't know if you agree with me, but this suite mix, from a market perspective, would be considered, well, this would not be desirable in the market to have 77 bachelor suites and 11 one-bedrooms. Can we agree on that? This property is overwhelmingly bachelor suites in a high-rise. That's completely atypical, is it not?
The only thing I can agree on is the fact that it has 77 bachelor suites and one-bedroom units. How the market would perceive that.
Okay, well, I know that you look at a lot of apartments. Do you ever see this kind of suite mix in a high-rise?
Well, it depends on where it is located as well. So I'm not sure. Different areas, different demands, and different supplies. So I don't know how the market would react to this.
Okay, can we agree? You mentioned area. Can we agree that Chinatown has typically over the last, let's say, decade or more proven fairly difficult to redevelop? Is that fair to say?
I don't know. I
Okay.
couldn't answer that.
So you're not aware of any of the policies like the center venture and some of those. So is it fair to say at a minimum that the attempts to redevelop Chinatown are policy driven and not market driven? Is that fair?
I don't know.
Okay,
I
that's
couldn't
fine.
answer
You don't know, that's okay. All right,
I don't
so
have that information.
okay, all right, so that's fine. And then the cap rate, that's modeled as well.
They're all modeled, yes.
Okay, I think those are my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Ms. Duncan, questions of the assessor?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Valerie?
I'm not sure. Were you in this building, Mr. Assessor?
No, I wasn't able to inspect the property in the interior.
Okay, were there any any permits taken out for any type of renovations?
I wasn't able to check on that. So I don't know if there are any.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you. Again, we're going to go to Mr. Story, but your NOIs are exactly the same, so it's cap rate. So Mr.
All cap
Story-
rate.
Mr. Story, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. And again, yeah, we're all just on cap rate here. So we're dealing with a 13-story high rise at the corner of Pacific and Princess. Again, this is a property that was purpose built for social housing. It's in Chinatown. The suite mix is commensurate with the needs of social housing. These are typically what we'll call single occupant suites, and that's again, if we look at this from a market perspective, these are extremely small. This suite mix would be considered inferior, to be certain. I also note that we don't have any parking to speak of. We've got 5 spaces. I think I've been inside this building at some stage, I seem to recall, but not for the purpose of this cycle. Clearly with COVID and whatnot, there's a lot of seniors here. We don't typically tend to go in, but so I don't know about the interior, but it is Manitoba housing. It is that late 1970s vintage. So we are going to just make the general assumption that the condition is fair. But the main issue here is we're gonna have an issue with location. We've got no parking. We've got a poor suite mix, and we've got very small suite sizes. We have no history of economic profit. And effectively that's going to form the crux of our argument. So for slightly different reasons than what we saw on Dufferin, for example, we are using a cap rate of 7%. Again, it's a theoretical exercise that we're doing here, but when we look at all of the factors that would give a next prudent investor some pause, we think that a cap rate at the higher end of the scale, not at the uppermost end of the scale, but skewing to the high end of that, it's not quite 7.4, but 7% is reasonable in our mind. And again, if you just look on page 11, we have obviously we're not going to use the actual income. It's about 440 grand a year. So we're saying that a market income for this should be what the assessor's saying, about 676,000. That's fine. Low end of the market vacancy. That's also fine. And we've even accepted the expense ratio. And you're quite right, Mr. Chair. We've accepted the NOI. But when you look at the actual performance of this property, when you look at no history of economic profit, you look at the location, the suite size, the suite mix, no parking, there are enough red flags or factors there to warrant an adjustment up to 7%. So with that, we come to a value of $4,358,000, and that's based on an NOI of 305.26 as assessed. Again, just adjusting that cap rate up. And I did in the break here, I looked very quickly at that last decision, and it is a 150 basis point adjustment, which is interesting. We're looking for 140 basis point adjustment for different but similar reasons with that guiding methodology. So again, we are suggesting that this property, the assessment for this cycle not exceed $4,358,000 based on our presentation, and I'm open to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Vanderema, questions of Mr. Story?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Ms. Duncan?
No questions, thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Warhon?
None, thank you.
Okay. Summation, either party?
None for me, Mr. Chair.
None for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right. Let's go to the next property, which is on Kennedy Street, and it's number 469. Mr. Vanderema, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-1732. It has a roll number of 13053062000. The property is located at 469 Kennedy Street. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023. And using reference date of April 1st, 2021, the assessed value is $2,436,000. is classified as a residential 2 with the liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 2 buildings, 3 stories, an actual years built of 1910 to 1985, and an effective years built of 1945 to 1985. There are 27 suites with 8 outdoor parking. The zoning is downtown living with a land area of 7,245 square feet, a planned area of 7,158 square feet, basement area of 1,158 square feet, and a gross floor area of 28,632 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. Page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, the average monthly rent per unit on this property is $904.94, and it has 27 units. The gross potential rent is $293,201, has a vacancy rate of 4.7%, or $13,780. It has an effective gross income of $279,421. Has an expense ratio of 54.23%, or $151,530. It has a net operating income of $127,891. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.25%, the capitalized income is $2,436,019, or $2,436,000. Page 5 are some rent comparables. First one is located at 15 Hargrave Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $881. And the next one is located at 71 Kennedy Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $875. The third one is located at 400 Assiniboine Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $934. And the fourth one is located at 380 Assiniboine Avenue, and it has an average monthly rent per unit of $907. Next page is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. On the next page, page 7, is the capitalization rate chart. On page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. Beginning of page 9 to page 13 is the 2020 income and expense information. That's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Valderrama. Can we establish this is a market apartment? This is not social housing, just so the board is clear?
This is not a social housing.
Okay, perfect. And this building was built in 1910 originally, is that correct?
1910 and then 1985 also. So
Oh, well, okay, I think that's a record,
1985.
right? Or something. But why does it say that there are 8 outdoor stalls? There are no stalls here, are there?
That's just per record. So I haven't really inspected the property.
Okay, but I'm looking at what was submitted to you, and the fellow who purchased it under parking, he wrote no site parking, and that's typical because this building, quite frankly, was built in called the horse and buggy days. This is 1910, so parking wasn't a consideration, right?
I'm not sure if there was any parking back then. I wasn't born, so I don't know.
Me neither. All right, that's fine. I just want to point that out. But okay, but if that is indeed erroneous, does that affect the model?
I'm not sure. I don't know how the model reacts with regard to parking.
Okay, and just to be very clear, locationally, this is the corner of Kennedy and Cumberland, correct?
Just gonna take a look at my map here. Blue corner. Yeah, it is by Cumberland and Kennedy.
Okay, and we would call this typically Central Park area, correct?
I just don't have that information if it's within the Central Park or just outside, but it's close to the Central Park, yes.
Okay, so it's like right across from the back part of the Balmoral Hotel, for example, right? That's where we are?
Is it the Balmoral Memorial? Probably it is within the vicinity.
Okay, and does the model consider the location? Like, would you consider this I suppose, let me rephrase this. would you consider this a location that might be less desirable than some other neighborhoods in the downtown, so to speak?
Again, in comparison to other location, it might be, however, I mean, it is in that location, so
Yeah,
look at it
okay.
as it is.
But I guess I'm just trying to figure out, and of course, everything here is modeled, correct? The actual rents weren't considered. This is just purely the model, correct? On page 4?
These are all model parameters, yes.
All
Correct.
models, okay, got it. And then I see on, you've rightly pointed out that there's a sale before the reference date for $1.5 million.
There was a sale in 2018, however, that wasn't verified, so I'm not sure.
Okay, so the city didn't follow up on that sale?
No, not that. I didn't verify it, or it wasn't verified.
Okay, but did the city send a mailer out? Typically, when we see a sale, we see a sales mailer that was sent to the owner asking a number of questions. Was that done in this instance?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay, but is it call it a clean sale? It's a market transaction? Are you aware of that?
As mentioned, I wasn't able to verify it, so I
Okay.
don't know.
It's okay. It's okay. All right. So, well, all right. I guess I'm just a bit concerned with that cap rate, but we've sort of gone over some of the cap rate issues. I'll leave my comments, Mr. Chair, for my presentation. Mr. Boardroom, I thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Duncan, questions of the assessor?
No questions, thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Rawhorn?
You're showing the effective date 1945 to 1985. Are you aware of any improvements in the building? Have any permits been taken out?
I have no information on that one, ma'am. All I know is based on that one, there are some renovations that were done, so I'm not sure if or the particulars of those renovations.
So you have no info on the renos. Do you know when those renos were supposedly done?
No, I have no information on that one too.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Vanderema, it's funny that when you see sales like that, you should be pursuing, some inquiry minds in regards to
Right.
the sale itself. So, but you didn't do that. So I can ask the applicant at the time. The cap rate of 5.25 used by the model, you think that is the correct cap rate for the subject property?
I believe it is fitting for the subject property.
And I see that it was originally built in 1910 and then probably expanded or in 145, but in 1945. Do you know anything about that? What transpired?
No, I don't have that information with me, Mr. Chair.
And the 8 outdoor parkings for 27 units, you think it's lacking there?
As indicated in the sale or income and expense mailer, there are none. So the outdoor parking may have to be corrected, Mr. Chair, on our records.
All right. I thank you, Mr. Vanderema. Mr. Story, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so as we've established, we have an older building. Now, just to be very clear though, when we talk about, for example, renovations, I don't have a sense of the interior of this property, but I would suggest to you that the work that's done is likely to maintain the rentability of the units. They're certainly not luxury, judging by the rents and judging by the location. So just want to be very clear on that. And Mr. Boardroom has rightly pointed out that there is indeed no parking. We're not disputing the overall effective age of 1944 that the city's using. That seems fine. Clearly, it can't be true to its vintage of 1910. It would be completely obsolete if it were indeed, true to what it looked like 110 years ago. Now, that's not to say that the structure of the building, the exteriors of it, the bones of the building, they are indeed 110 years old. So we have to capture that somewhere. And we've done that in the cap. Again, we've used the actual rents. Now, locationally, not to put too fine a point on this, we are at the southeast corner of Kennedy and Cumberland. This is indeed the Central Park neighborhood. It is across the street from, if you know, the little standalone beer vendor behind the Balmoral Hotel. This is right across the street. I've got photos in my brief. You can see it. That's exactly where this is. Okay, it also, just for interest's sake, Center Village on Balmoral, the back end of Center Village, which is all now bordered and fenced. This faces onto the back end of that development. So you'll see it in the photos. Okay, so just flipping very quickly. And I will suggest to you, Mr. Chair, this is a new client for us. So we only have the 2020 income. So our workup is indeed based on 2020. Obviously, we would like to have a long, fulsome history of the income and expenses. But in this case, because it is a new client, we have 2020. They're showing 13.5% vacancy. We've defaulted to the downtown vacancy of 4.7% as assessed. That's fine. Again, here's a situation where the model, I should say, is suggesting that the rents ought to be 293, 201. The actuals are indeed 224, 136. The expenses, they're showing on their reporting at 59.5. We have stabilized that using a very, very low R&M at 49.8. So you'll see it's quite interesting, actually. The city is suggesting that the rents ought to be 293 and the expenses ought to be 151, but indeed the rents are 224 in reality, and the expenses are stabilized at 106, so just a touch lower than what they're reporting. Now that brings us in range to 49.8% on the expense ratio, giving us an NOI of 107,313. So it's $20,000 lower than what the model is suggesting. But again, we don't know how the model operates. We're just using the actuals. This is what this property is able to achieve. We've capitalized it with a 6.5% cap. I will note that properties built in that sort of, call it originally in the turn of the 20th century, should be on that high side of 6.1 to 6.6. There should be some consideration for the area. There's some consideration to the lack of parking. So we feel very, very comfortable at 6.5%. We don't have any, I should also point out, there's no air conditioning in this building. It's just something that we found in our discovery process here. And there was a sale. I haven't verified it, but there's nothing to lead us to believe that it is not a market transaction. And that was for, again, $1.5 million, which makes sense because we're suggesting the value today ought not to exceed $1,651,000. So I think that our submission here makes sense. We're using the actuals. We're looking back to the sale, and perhaps it's a bit optimistic, but using the actuals for 2020, using a cap rate of 6.5%, which is commensurate with an older building in the downtown on Central Park, we do come to a value of $1,651,000. Mr. Chair, you asked a good question about that 5.25 cap. That's a cap rate that we typically see on a newer build with amenities in a better location. So I think the model has quite frankly missed the mark in terms of the income, and certainly in terms of the cap rate. So ultimately, we're suggesting that the value ought not to exceed $1,651,000. Balance of my brief has the building details. You can see that it's wood frame. It's 112 years old now. You can see the suite counts. You can see by the owners reporting that there is indeed no parking. You have a rent roll there showing you the rents, which we've used in determining our income. And then on page 18, just to orient you, you can see exactly where this property is. First picture on page 18, you can see the back end of Center Village. We probably all know it. It's that white with orange windows that faces Balmoral, but this is the back side of it. You can see that old that entrance. It's very interesting. It's clearly from 110 years ago. And then again, I've mentioned that the back part of the Balmoral, just as a marker, you can see as we drive into Central Park, that's where we are. We pass the back end of the Balmoral, past the beer store, and on our right-hand side is the corner of Kennedy and Cumberland, where we are located. So I think I'll leave it there. And again, we do respectfully submit the value of this property not exceed $1,651,000. And with that, I am open to your questions.
I thank you, Mr. Story. And Mr. Valderrama, questions of Mr. Story?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I thank you. Ms. Duncan?
No questions, thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Warhan?
None, thank you.
I just have a couple questions. Mr. Story, this is your client?
Pardon me?
This is your client?
My client? Yes, it is indeed.
Yeah. So did you have a conversation with him in regards to, what you're preparing to do and what he wanted?
In term, no, frankly, no. So our client, just to be clear, is the management company. So the actual owner I've not spoken with, but we represent the company who manages the property.
But in your conversation with the management company, did you not pursue questioning the sale of the property?
No, I did not have the opportunity to discuss the sale of this property. Frankly, it didn't raise a red flag to me, Mr. Chair. It looked about right. When I'm looking at the income, I can understand exactly. It makes sense. It's a good question. You can appreciate we have a huge volume of work to work through here, but to be honest with you, that sale did not raise a red flag to me. So no, I did not, but eventually we'll have that conversation. But for the purpose of our exercise today, no, I didn't. But I do think it makes sense.
You should, we as panel members, look at a few things, and when I have, a sale on the property and the assessed value was over $1 million, I'd have to, raise some red flags in that regard.
Sure. Well, I suppose, Mr. Chair, that there's a sale and then there's a workup on our side where we've used the actuals. I think we probably generally agree that cap rate is exceptionally low for this property, and that's probably what's leading to this very high assessment. And frankly, the income that the city is suggesting is not at all commensurate with what's being achieved here. So I appreciate your comment. I will certainly discuss the sale with them. I didn't see a sales mailer for some reason, but I will certainly discuss it with them. But from our side of the table here, our workup and that sale, those make sense. The outlier here is that very high assessment.
So I accept that, Mr. Story, but as panel members, we have to deal with certain things, and this is, some of the problems that we sort of have. The other question that I have too, the model is according to your gross figure, the model is $70,000 higher. I know NOI is only 20,000, but I mean,
yes. So Mr. Chair, I obviously I can't speak to how the model behaves.
I totally agree. Like you said, I think you said you only had 2020 statement. Do you not?
Absolutely. And if we look, just to be very clear though, Mr. Chair, on page 17 of my brief, These are the contract rents. This is the rent roll. This is what's being achieved here. So the model is, I suppose, let's say theoretical in nature or whatever. But if you were in the market purchasing this property, you would look at the rent roll, you would look at its capacity to produce income, and the rent roll on a monthly basis is all laid out here for you. So I appreciate all of your comments. I think you're absolutely right. I will certainly look into that sale. But as to why the model has overshot the income, I'm not sure, but it's here in black and white on page 17. This is the income capacity for this property. So, but I do appreciate your comments.
Yes, it's like you say, you only have the one statement to deal with, and unfortunately, you can't really stabilize what you don't really have.
No, but that is absolutely correct. But we would use the most current year's income. So I suppose we haven't been able to stabilize expenses over 3 years. But well, we just looked at it very, very quickly, Mr. Chair. There's some issues here where well, you know, quite frankly, the expenses might be a touch low. So I agree with you, but I will say that the income is the major issue here, and that we do have good information on that, and that is what we would use regardless of however many years we had. And we are using a lower expense ratio than both what is being suggested by the owner in 2020, and certainly less than what the city is suggesting. So I agree with you. It's always best to have full sets of income and expense, but ultimately this is going to affect our analysis on the expense side rather than on the income side. And I think we've been very, very conservative with our expenses on this property.
So your cap rate of 6.5%, you feel as if it's applicable to a building of that age?
Absolutely. So if I can ask you please to just turn to page 8. I've summarized our cap rate conclusions. You'll recall at the beginning of this document, we went through the whole study, but ultimately it boils down to this bifurcation of properties by vintage, and whether they're high rise, low rise, and we are suggesting, as I mentioned, properties built before 1946 typically would be applied a cap rate of 6.1 to 6.6%. We recognize that location is an issue here. It's not in, River Heights. It's not an older property in a character neighborhood. It's in the called the core area of downtown. It's on Central Park. It has no parking. So if our range is 6.1 to 6.6, I feel very comfortable at 6.5. Yes.
All right. I thank you, Mr. Story. Summation, either party?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
No, I thank you.
You're okay?
I'm good. Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay, let's go further down the street, or yes, at 396 Kennedy Street. Mr. Vanderema, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Next property has a file number of 22-1559. It has a roll number of 13053032600. It is located at 393 Kennedy Street. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $7,042,000. It is classified as residential 2 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 1 building, 8 stories. It has an actual and effective year built of 1987. It has 75 suites with 75 outdoor parking. It has downtown living zoning, and it has a land area of 24,043 square feet, a planned area of 5,855 square feet, a basement area of 950 square feet, a gross floor area of 79,413 square feet. Page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. And page 4 is the income valuation summary. There are 75 units, and the average monthly rent per unit is $872.01. The gross potential rent is $784,809. It has a vacancy rate of 4.7%, or $36,886. Has an effective gross income of $747,923. It has an expense ratio of 52.92%, or $395,801. The net operating income is $352,122. Applying the capitalization rate of 5%, the capitalized income is $7,042,440, or $7,042,000. On page 5 are some rent comparables. First one is located at 400 Assiniboine Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $934. Second one is located at 61 Edmonton Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,030. The third one is located at 59 Donald Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $812. And the last one is located at 380 Assiniboine Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $907. Page 6 is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. On page 7 is the capitalization rate chart. Page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. And pages 9 to 11 is the 2020 income and expense information. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
I thank you, Mr. Van Dremme. Mr. Story, questions?
Couple of quick questions. Thank you, sir. And just to be clear, our rents being achieved here are actually higher than the model. So I'll limit my questions and comments to cap rate and expenses. So, Mr. Boardroom, did you look at the actual expenses in this property? I see that you've included the income and expense information, and it has indeed been submitted to you. Did you consider it for the purpose of today's exercise?
I looked at it and I still went with the model expense.
Oh, okay. Now that's interesting. So the model expense is $395,801. But if you go back 5 years, we've never been close to that. The expenses, I should say, have always been elevated far above what you're suggesting here. Is that fair to say?
Which one is elevated?
The expenses, the total expenses. So I've included here, just for the board's information and for yours, expenses from 17, 18, 19, and 20. And you can see the expenses are always well above, well, let's say between 435 to about 480. But they're never under $400,000. So you said you looked at them, but I guess my question is, why did you defer to the model when the expenses are clearly much higher in this property?
Well, the expenses for the income and expense information that I attached is $642,440. So obviously there's something that's really high in there.
Right, but you could, okay, I'll save my comments for my presentation, but okay, that's fine. So I just wanted to get a sense of your thinking around the expenses, and then that cap rate of 5%. Does that not strike you as extremely low for this property?
No, it did not.
It did not? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll save my comments for my presentation.
I thank you. Ms. Duncan?
No questions, thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Warhon?
None at this time, thank you.
Mr. Story, your presentation?
Thank you, sir. Okay, so here we are on Kennedy Street, 300 block, 393. We have a masonry building. Masonry is a positive. It's built in 1987, so it's 35 years old. It has 8 stories, so we consider this a high rise. Typically anything over, let's say, 6 stories is considered a high rise. We have a 1-to-1 parking ratio here. That's a positive. We've not seen that today, so we do consider that a positive. And again, now the location is perhaps a bit challenging, but we have not made an adjustment above our baseline here. So, all right, so just getting into it. We are again at we're at Kennedy and Capel. So I think that we're probably being very conservative with our cap rate of 5.5%. That's our baseline cap rate for high rises built in this era. So, okay, you can see it's right across the street from Knox United. That's on page 5. Now, in terms of what I was talking about, in terms of the expenses, I'll just direct your attention, please, to page 10 of my brief. I've included the income and expenses from 17, 18, 19, and 20. So as per our regular course of action, we've used the actual potential gross rent, which has vacancy included at 762. The city's suggesting 747, so we are a touch higher. We do pick up income from laundry, from parking, and then other what we'll call miscellaneous as reported. So that actually brings our effective gross income to 797. So here's a situation where I guess the model can overshoot the income, but sometimes it can also undershoot it. So that's fine. Now, what we do need to recognize, though, is that the expenses are, well, a higher rent are typically the income and expense are typically functions of one another. So if you do have a higher income, it's likely because you're having to spend more money to subtend those rents. That's sort of like a natural law in apartments. That makes sense. So when we stabilize our actual expenses, we come to 462,980. Now I won't belabor this. If there's any specific point you'd like to go through, it's the same methodology that we've outlined before for market apartments. You can see here that we've done a pretty in-depth look at these, and we've stabilized to a ratio of 58.1, slightly higher than 52.9, but that makes sense because the EGI is higher. So ultimately, our NOI becomes lower than the assessor. We're at 334,236, and we've applied a cap rate, which I think is a bit optimistic, but we're comfortable at 5.5%. Leading us to a value of $6,077,026, which we of course round to $6,077,000. Now, just as a further step on page 11, we've provided you with the repair and maintenance study. So Mr. Valderrama pointed out that the expenses for that year were high or whatever, but what we do and what we need to do to determine what is CapEx and what is R&M is to actually back out the CapEx from the R&M to determine what the R&M is on an annualized basis, and then what it is per door. And you can see here that the R&M per suite is $1,808, and that very much falls in line with the other apartments that we see. So that's just an added step for you to see that we've worked this out to come to an exact or a position that makes sense. So ultimately, again, we do respectfully submit that the value not exceed $6,077,000. We've included obviously the city valuation, the building details, and then that annual statement. And just not to belabor this, but very quickly on page 16, you can see this is the annual statement, and I believe the assessor mentioned it. But what you need to do is actually take where those red lines are there, or the red writing, I should say. Those are the itemized inputs that we've used in the R&M study, and that's how we determine, or that helps to inform how we determine the actual expenses on an annualized basis. And those are all included here for your perusal. But ultimately, we believe that cap rate is very well supported, if not low, but we are very, very comfortable with the resulting value of $6,077,000. And with that, I'm open to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Story.
Thank you.
Mr. Vanderrama?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
None. Ms. Duncan?
No questions, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Warhan?
None, thanks.
Mr. Story, in your presentation, I'm going through my notes here. Did you not include a vacancy rate?
The vacancy actually, sir, is now this, you'll see this sometimes. The owner actually includes the vacancy in the statement. So we don't add a vacancy on top of it because the statement already includes the vacancy. So adding a another vacancy deduction would be tantamount to double counting. So suffice it to say, it is indeed included in that that top line as reported by the owner. Different owners report this in different ways, and that's just how this is done. So we're cautious not to double count.
Okay, so so you're saying they're included in the statement. So does this make the expenses higher? Like, you know, the city's at 52 and you're at 58%.
Right. No. So if you sorry, I'm trying to figure this out mathematically.
I'm trying to do the two.
Yeah. So, well, okay. So here's a sort of a theoretical thing we can do. When we look at the potential gross rents, and then we look at the discounts, that's not vacancy, but rather that is a, we talked about the RTB a little bit earlier. That's what they're permitted to charge. But of course, the market will only bear certain rental rates. So on their statements, they have to discount back. What they're actually charging. Now, vacancy is just included there. If that were higher, well, I suppose if we were to include the vacancy and then just back it out, I mean, if we did it right, it would come to the same number. So it shouldn't actually have a tangible difference on the bottom line.
I just noted that it wasn't there as usual.
Yeah, so that's why. So in this scenario, when you see that INCL from on vacancy, that just means that it's included in the calculation already. But yeah, no, it's a great question.
Okay. Summation, either party?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
No, but we're good. I think we're just again, even when the income is higher, we do respectfully submit that the actuals should take precedence over the model. And I thank you very much.
I thank you. All right, we'll just go to the last one, which is 461 Cumberland Avenue. Mr. Vanderama, the floor is yours.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Last one is a file number of 22-1929.
Let me just interrupt for 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Story, you're seeking, some multiple points. So
you know what, Mr. Chair, as a standard course, we appeal CC&L on properties where there's different class codes, but in this case, there's a daycare in this building, and we are not disputing that. So we'll only be talking about quantum on what we'll call the main income stream.
Yeah. Okay. So
we'll ask that part be confirmed.
Liability in class will be will just more or less be confirmed.
Precisely, sir. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Jazz, is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Vanderama, whenever you're ready, take us through.
Yes. Again, the file number is 22-1929. The roll number is 1305273100. The property is located at 461 Cumberland Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023. Using reference date of April 1st, 2021, the property has split assessment. The first assessed value is $6,929,000. It is classified as residential 2 with the liability of taxable. And the second assessment is $280,000. It is classified as 40 institutional with the liability of exempt. The property is a residential apartment with 1 building, 7 stories, an actual and effective year built of 1986. It has 70 suites with 18 outdoor parking. It is zoned as downtown living. It has a land area of 24,004 square feet, plan area of 8,266 square feet, and a gross floor area of 72,277 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. Page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, there are 70 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $926.94. The apartment section of the property has a gross potential rent of $778,630. It has a vacancy rate of 4.7%, or a vacancy of $36,596. It has an effective gross income of $742,034. It has an expense ratio of 53.31%, or $395,578 dollars. Has a net operating income of $346,456, applying the capitalization rate of 5.0%. The capitalized income is $6,929,120, or $6,929,000 rounded. And the 40E, or the institutional exempt, has an estimated market value rounded of $280,000. On page 5 are some rent comparables. The first one is located at 61 Edmonton Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,030. The second one is located at 380 Assiniboine Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $907. The third one is located at 405 Assiniboine Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $947. And the last one is located at 400 Assiniboine Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $934. Page 6 is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. Page 7 is the capitalization rate chart. Page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. And beginning of page 9 to page 12 is the income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Well, we've almost said it all on these types of properties today. So, Mr. Boardroom, I guess my only question is, just for clarity, this is indeed social housing, correct?
It looks like it based on the ownership.
Okay. And again, it's your work up here. Nothing is overwritten by an assessor. It's simply all model derived, and you're here to defend the work of the model, correct?
All of the parameters are model derived.
Okay. And I guess my one only question here, that 5% cap rate, did that not strike you as particularly low?
No, it did not.
Okay, those are my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Duncan?
No questions, thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Vaughan?
None, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Story, your presentation?
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're still here in Central Park, 461 Cumberland. It is indeed social housing. This is the north side of Cumberland. It's the northwest corner of Edmonton and Cumberland. Again, Central Park. So we're built in 1986. It is a high rise. There's a daycare on the main level. We're not contesting the value of the daycare because it is indeed exempt from taxation, so it has no bearing on the tax burden. Total gross floor is 72,277 square feet, and it has 26 one-bedroom suites, 31 two-bedroom suites, and 13 three-bedroom suites for a total of 70 units. And we have 20 outdoor parking stalls. It's a small differential from the city's 18, but we believe there are 20 as reported. Okay, no central air conditioning in this property. We note that 46% of the suites have no carpet, and 7% of the suites have partial carpeting. Okay, now in this case, we have a huge amount of R&M, income and expense data from this owner. So if you come with me very quickly to page 12, you can see that we're accepting the rents. So obviously the actual rents are RGI, and they would not be typical. They would be, they're less than half of what would we consider a market. So we're fine with the city's application of a depressed CMHC rent. We're fine with a 4.7% vacancy in the downtown. But for this one, we were able to go through the actual income and expenses, and where I mentioned earlier, when we've accepted a lower expense ratio, we said, well, we have to capture that in the cap. I went back and forth on this to decide, well, is this a 5.75 or is it a 6% cap? But I've erred on the side of caution here, and I'm going to suggest to you that 5.75, when we take into account the actual expenses stabilized, makes sense. And ultimately, using that cap rate of 5.75, but also recognizing the actual expenses, we come to an overall value of 5,482,814, which we round to 5,483,000. So again, this is social housing. Oh, and just to be very clear, on page 13, we have our R&M study for this property. You can see that once we take the R&M, the total R&M, then back out waste and snow and capex, we come to 1,669 per door. Those are the actual expenses. So we're not deferring to the model. We're using the actuals, which were a touch higher, which is why we're using a cap rate, which is a touch lower than what we might typically use. We're cautious not to double count or make deductions or whatever doubly. So ultimately, our value that we're suggesting to you respectfully today is 5,483,000. And I suppose with that, I'm open to your questions. And again, the balance of the brief does include the financials and the two board decisions and our position on the upward adjustment for social housing. And with that, I thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Vanderama, questions of Mr. Story?
None, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Ms. Duncan?
Just one. Under property condition, it's noted as inferior basic suite finishes with no central air.
Yeah.
As far as suite finishes, was there did you see that they're basic? Like, how did that assessment come up?
As reported by the owner. So we've handled these properties for a number of years, and we have a pretty long history with these. So we're very comfortable with that assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I thank you. Ms. Warhon?
None, thank you.
Mr. Story, the class code 40, you're not disputing, you're agreeing with the city?
Only because it doesn't have a it has no burden on the it has no bearing on the tax burden of the property. So we didn't look at it. I presume you're going to suggest that maybe the rental rate or something like that is high, but we didn't look at it because it is exempt. It's a daycare, so we're fine with it. But I'm sure if it were taxable and we dug into it, we might have some concerns. But for today's exercise, based on the fact that it has no contributory value to the owner's tax burden, we're leaving it be.
All right, I thank you, Mr. Story. Summation, either party?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Just Mr. Chair and panel members, thank you very much for your time today. I'm going to suggest that when it comes to the social housing properties, I think we've kind of made our case here and pointed out that I don't think the city's model has adequately captured some of these inherent risks. I leave you with the board orders supporting our position. And again, I thank you for listening to our presentations.
Mr. Story, thank you very much for your presentation and results very soon. Mr. Vanderama, thank you very kindly. Have a pleasant day. We have heard all the scheduled items and this hearing is now adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Have a
Thank you,
good
everyone.
day.
You too.